Hello, I'm Roger Bisbee from the Skill Builder channel, and I've got a delightful job today of ripping up this floor. This is a semi-basement. Turns out that it's timber joists on earth, so with no ventilation and damp, there's a lot of rot. With all this plywood over the top, there's no way of missing the nails. Now I've actually got this access here. I can just check there are no pipes and cables. I thought there'd be loads of dry rot under here. This earth in some places is absolutely sodden. You can just feel the moisture in it. It's kind of miraculous that this has lasted as long as it has, given the fact it's got no ventilation, no damp-proof membrane. These are actually bits of tree trunk. You can see that they're hardwood and they've stood the test of time. This is what I expected to find. All this lot is just going to come up without a fight. You can see the cables here. These are all pretty ropey. We're going to have all that out. Look at the sand. This is probably what saved it, actually, being so well drained. If we can get down to a firm base, great. If we can't, we're going to have to get some concrete pumped in here and then some insulation. The idea with these saws, something that a lot of people don't do, and that is that you have to keep them pressed hard against whatever you're cutting. If you let the saw bounce about, you're losing half the action of it, if you like. Instead of cutting the wood, it's just moving your arm up and down. So press it hard down against whatever you're cutting and you'll find it goes through a lot faster and a lot easier. I've got the little Sawzall blades. They're supposed to be good for nails that are embedded in wood. That's important. Don't try cutting through ordinary nails with them. But I went for a short blade because there's loads of cables lying around here. I've looked and most of them are fairly deep.
Roger has cleared out this room and he's also cleared off on holiday, and I think he could probably do with a break because this room was tough. The floor didn't come up very easily and now we're left with dirt and sand. We're going to have to dig a lot of this out. What we're going to end up with is hardcore base, sand blinding, damp-proof membrane, then the insulation, 75mm of Screed. And there are two rooms. Roger got the tricky room. We've got Sam in here. And it's good news for Sam because what have we got in here, Sam?
Hang on, I wouldn't say I've got the easy room. Let's just get that straight. I took some floorboards up. It was completely sodden with sort of wet rot, so it came up really easy. But what I've discovered is these bricks are laid in like a herringbone fashion. So I reckon possibly where Roger was working, this was the original floor down here.
This is a good example as well of when a customer asks you to price a job. It's tricky, you just don't know what you're going to come up against. It could be what we had in the first room, or you might get this, and this is going to save probably like a day or two, would you say?
Absolutely, it's the unknown of digging holes. You price for the worst case scenario, but sometimes you get a result.
Okay, so we've now got the whole of the ground floor up, all the floorboards up. Sam is digging a trench for a bit of conduit to feed network cables through. And Sam, you've come up with a nice little bit of a, what I would call a Wallace and Gromit invention over here. What's going on here?
Well, it's just some OSB with some 4x2 rails. We backed our truck up with a 1.5 tons of type 1. We're going to slide it down the chute and we can decant it around with relative ease. We've taken out the old wooden floor that was all rotten. We've discovered a few frogs that made me jump this morning. Now we've just compacted about 100mm of type 1 aggregate. We've just raked it about again because there's a few high spots, and then we're going to compact it again. And then we're going to bring in a sand blinding over the top of this. And because we've got this access, it shoots straight down into a wheelbarrow, and then we can cart it around the basement. Just installing the DPM, the damp-proof membrane. DPM is 4 metres, so we've got about 6, so we're going to have some joins in it. We're just tacking this to the wall, so when the Screed comes in, it doesn't pull it off, because I like all my corners to be dressed in really tight. So when the Celotex goes in, it goes right to the corners. Anyway, jointing it You must use a polythene jointing tape, which is this. It's really sticky and waterproof. So that's what I'm doing now. I'm going around all the joints and taping them all together. And then when the screed goes in, it can't leak anywhere.
Now I'm using the Procrate system on this job and I really like these castellated trays. The reason I like them is because you'll see that the pipe just slots into it absolutely beautifully. You've got all your spacings worked out for you. Whereas when you pin through the insulation, it can pull up, you've got to measure it all out. I just prefer this, and the other reason I prefer this is because it protects that silver foil layer of the insulation, so you don't need to put down a sheet of polythene on top of the insulation, although you can, there's no harm in doing that. But what we're going to do when we go around the edge, when you put the expansion or the isolation foam in around the edge, you can actually attach it to this to stop any of that liquid screed going underneath. Now we've reached the stage where we've got all the pipe work in and we've filled it with water, and that's very, very important. If you imagine all this full of air, it would have a tendency to want to rise to the surface, and if it does that, it's too late. Make sure it's all filled up with water, get all the air out. The screed guys can come in and pump the screed straight in. You'll have no trouble. It's under pressure. As the screed cures, it heats up, it expands the water in the pipe and it gives you even more pressure. The pipe will expand very, very slightly more, and then obviously once you put normal pressure in, it'll be fine. We've got a bit of a funny thing here. That's kind of the stepped footings. We're leaving that. The screed will come up above it anyway. In this room, which is going to be a studio, there's going to be a central desk, a big central desk with people working on all sides of it. We're going to use a few horseshoe clips. Now, they're not really necessary, but there are a few places where the Procrate is rising up. So the next time I will see this job is when the screed has been poured in and I come back to connect it up to the heating system and also to put the control panel in.
Jim from JC Screeds, we did a quick search and noticed that you've got loads of 5-star reviews. Take us through the preparation that gets you up to this point.
Yeah, of course. So backfilled the floor with Type 1, give it a whack, compacted it right down, 1200 gauge DPM over the top of that. Underfloor heating pipes have been installed. All the edges have had a perimeter strip put around, allows a little bit of expansion for when the screed goes down. Forgot to mention, you've obviously put the insulation boards down beneath the underfloor heating. And it's basically, we've created a pond effect. So it's completely sealed. Set up all the tripods, we set our levels to the datum agreed with the client, and then basically we're just going to start pouring the screed in when the screed gets here. We're going for a cementitious screed because we're slightly below ground level. It's called Semfloor, absolutely outstanding. We're going for C20 strength.
The slump test is reading 260 mils, which is bang on, perfect drop, straight from the air, straight from the truck, good to go.
So Jim from JC Screeds is on his merry way. He's done the job, it looks great, and the good thing about using specialists is that they do get in and out, they don't mess about. And the other thing he's done is he's left us a care pack for the screed to show us how to look after it, how to heat it up, and all the important things you need to know to stop it cracking in those initial stages. So who would have thought that a screed needed a care pack? I've connected up the manifold now to the flow and return on the heating. Before we just had it pressured and it was isolated, and now I've put the isolating valves in here. I've done a power flush because the last thing you want is for any rubbish to be going into your underfloor heating system. It just needs to be a very gentle background heat, and that's why underfloor heating is so economical. The screed guy Jim said Just do it 1 degree a day and you'll be fine. So that's what we're going to do.
And we've got a bit of a damp issue on this wall. They've obviously had problems here in the past. They come up with a solution, but it just wasn't good enough in my opinion. So we've put some ACO drainage in and connect it to the drain outside. It did rain a little bit while we were doing it, but we got over it. I mean, we've had some significant rainfall since we've done this ACO. It's drained away perfectly, so I'm really happy about that. We've corrected the problem outside, cleared the gutter, stopped the waste pipe from leaking, and now we're going to hack off this render, put some salt inhibitor on it. We're going to contact the guys at Safeguard because I'm sure they've got some products that we could use for this wall. This has definitely been treated before. The scratch coat that was on here had some waterproofing agent in it. Just to be safe, we're going to hack it off and start again.
So what I'm now going to do is apply 2 coats of TS Plus because it's below ground. The polymer does a number of things. It binds it together, it helps the waterproofing, and it stops any micro cracking. So once we've done the 2 coats, we're going to leave that to dry overnight, and then I'm going to apply Highline Plaster, which is a renovation plaster. Again, it's got this breathability. So I actually want to put 2 coats on in succession. So 1 coat, then a couple of hours, let it firm up, and then follow up with the 2nd coat. And that will make sure that there's no little gaps that we've left anywhere. Now I've put the first coat of TS Plus on the wall. We wait for this to dry. It says 2 to 4 hours, but you can see it's blue when it goes on. And once that blue goes, once it goes to brown, then it'll be ready to go. This is actually tested for 50 meters of head, which is a huge amount. But we've got to remember this is done in a laboratory and it's done with flat concrete, really solid concrete. When you're doing it in an actual Victorian sand and lime construction basement, you're talking about very different things. So that's why we level it out with that coat of render, that SPR, just to give us a nice flat surface and give it the maximum chance of working. So now I've left that TS Plus to dry overnight, it's time to put the Highline Plaster on. And the great thing about this lime plaster is that it's kind of breathable, it absorbs a little bit of condensation, moisture from the air, it's warm to the touch. So it's the ideal product for basements which, especially suffering from condensation, because it just absorbs a little bit of moisture and then releases it, almost like a buffer. And it is breathable, but it's also resistant to salt. So if you've got some gypsum plaster and you can see the salts coming through, hack that off, put this on. What I did is I sponged it all up just to close the holes up, and it's made a reasonable finish on it, but that wouldn't be what you would call a plaster finish. It's not as smooth as that. But, there's always a but. 3 coats of paint, non-vinyl paint, and it will close up beautifully. And the great thing about it is that the paint will hang on here. Sometimes when you get over-polished plaster, the paint peels off. I'm confident that once this has dried out, a few coats of paint will close it in. Back in the day, they would have used lime wash on a lime render, and you can understand what that would have done. So the whole mission here was to get rid of the damp, and I think we've done that, and considering it's a cellar, it's pretty good, and I'm happy and the customer's happy. So now we've reached a really great stage in this basement refurbishment because we're putting down this SPC flooring. That is a solid core product rather than your normal laminate. If you've ever laid laminate, it's a little bit wanting, sort of MDF type products, but this is in a different league, and it's got a totally waterproof cushion back on it. So it's an underlay built into the floor, and it just gives you a much harder wear layer than your average laminates. The beauty is you can use it in the bathroom or anything like that, so long as you don't soak it. It's fine as far as the waterproofing goes, but if you flooded your bathroom, you might find that it seeped down between the joints. It's a very satisfying little job to do because it clicks together. Juba's doing it. He's actually a cameraman, but he's dead handy. He does all sorts of things, and the only thing you've got to be careful of is that you stagger the joints. You don't have joints in a line, and the golden rule is you never put a joint closer than the width of the boards. Nice job. Once you get flying, you are flying, aren't you?
Yeah, no, it does click in very nicely.
Right, so you need a fat bloke to stand on the end, don't you?
I've been using some wedges and the wall here, but obviously
But
now
on here, yeah,
threshold.
yeah. So I'm just going to hang around here all day, Juby.
But it does actually click here.
I would just say, by the way, the most important tool you can have is a vacuum cleaner, because if you get the tiniest little bit of grit or something in that groove, you go to put the tongue in, it doesn't quite go in. You may not notice it first. You get 5 rows away and things are starting to drift a bit. You think, oh, and then you've got to take them up and clean it. So just be careful. Every time you do one, just have a look. And if there's any debris building up anywhere, just get that vacuum out. We've been sent the Tradeline TRM 240 vacuum cleaner from Pneumatic, and you'll know them because they make a much loved Henry that I've used for years and years. But this is an M-class vacuum cleaner, which is approved, because now you're not allowed to sweep up on site. Everything has to be removed by an approved vacuum cleaner. And an M-class, this will take 99.9% of the dust away. It's very efficient. It's got an alarm on it so that if it does get blocked or the filter gets blocked, it stops drawing efficiently. It will tell you, it's got an indicator that will tell you that you need to change the bag, change the filter, even wash the filter, because it's got a washable filter inside this. The HEPA 14, which stops the dust being reintroduced into the air, is a big step up even from the HEPA 13. When you're moving this from room to room, really great thing, you can take the hose off, put the cap on, and if you've got to take it away in your van to dispose of it, then that's it self-contained. But don't forget, give it a little clean on the outside as well, because when you've removed all that dust from the room and there's dust hanging around on the body of the cleaner itself, you don't want to be taking that away into other rooms or worse, into your van. And another great thing is we got a 10-meter lead here, which is so much better than having those short leads that you need an extension lead or you've got to keep changing plugs. So you can move around the job site quite happily with this. Regular skill builder viewers will have seen us using various thermal imaging cameras. I started out using the FLIR, which is very expensive, it's over £1,000. But then we tried out the other models that plug into your phone, which are a lot cheaper. I found they were actually pretty good. They were intuitive to use. I also use the Bosch GIS 1000C. But the one I want to show you now is the Topdon TC004. It's got a nice sharp clear display, and this pistol grip makes it quite easy and comfortable to use. You can point it at things, just pull this trigger, and you can take a little picture which is saved on board. This internal battery, it's a rechargeable, it's going to give you around about 15 hours of operation. You can use it for balancing radiators, you can get a flow and a return temperature, finding underfloor heating pipes. You can clearly see here the red lines of the pipes under the floor. If you go up towards the wall, for example, where we've got a colder wall, it will show you the contrast between the wall and the floor. As you move down onto the floor, you can see those red pipes, and you can read the temperatures on the dial here. We can look up at the downlighter. The bulb is hot, which is exactly what you'd expect. So if you want to look at those thermal imaging cameras and you want to see this one in particular, just follow the links on the screen. So that's the basement done, and I must admit it filled me with trepidation. I thought it's going to be hard, it's going to be terrible. Now it's done, I really love it. You come down, it's immediately warm and comfortable, the damp smell's gone, there's no bouncy bits of floor, it's all rock solid now, and we've got that lovely even heat that you get with underfloor heating. I really do recommend, and I love underfloor heating. Now we want to do more with gluttons for punishment in the way of basement renovations, and it seems to be a popular subject. So let us know what you think in the comments underneath. Anything you want to see, any products you think we ought to cover. We're probably going to go and see Rudy at Back to Basements in Leeds, because he's always got good jobs going on. So that's going to be on our list of things to do. If you want any information on any of the products we've used in this video, they're all in the links below. Come back and see us soon. I'm missing you already.